let's quickly start. So this is again always a very first reserved slide in my all of the presentation. Like this is the safe harbor statement. So saying safe harbor, I mean the first thing is like this session is only cover the basics because this is a quite detailed subject. I mean real application testing. If you want me, I can speak almost 24 hours about this. Like it's quite detailed. It comes with a lot of features and functionalities that I think is not possible to cover within 40-50 minutes or 60 minutes. The second, like we're not gonna go and we'll cover any kind of a simulation. I'm not performing that kind of demo. Of course, if you want, guys, I can provide definitely a kind of a simulation where I can do the same in any of our staging environments so that everyone can understand how exactly it works. So because
we wanted to know what went wrong already.
Nothing went wrong actually. Yes, sure. So, okay, the third point in the safe harbor statement, the purpose of the session is to give just an idea, the gist about the product offering and explain it. That's it. Okay, what exactly is rat? Of course, this is not the lazy, fat, drunk rodent. Like this is not that animal which you found in your house, right? So, real application testing is basically, as I said, is an Oracle offering. So it was introduced in Oracle 11G release 1. So it is actually there to replicate your production-like workload into your staging or in any of your lower environment or in your lab systems, right? Okay, so when it comes RAT, it basically comes with two options. The first is the database replay, which we have tested, and the second is the SQL performance analyzer. So there is a difference. Like for example, if you want to understand the entire database performance, then you have to use the database replay functionality. For example, if you are only to understand like, okay, this is the main query, I would like to understand its performance using this RAT functionality, then you have to use the SQL performance analyzer. So this is a kind of selective RAT approach. It will not apply on the entire database, but only to specific SQLs. Okay. So RAT is basically divided into database replay, and the second is the SQL performance analyzer. Again, I'm not going to go and cover SQL performance analyzer because that will complicate things, right? So again, the agenda of this discussion is to just make you guys aware about this RAT thing, right? Okay. So when can you use RAT, the database replay feature? Okay, the first is when you are doing any kind of a system change, like if you're doing the hardware replacement such as CPU, RAM, for example, you're modifying your system configuration. Like earlier you had 16 GB of RAM, now you're making it 32 or 64. Otherwise, one day you observe, okay, we have plenty of memory and we do not have any such SQLs running which are memory intensive. So we have free memory, why not reduce it, right? We have 32 GB of RAM, now let's make it only 16 GB. But how it will impact your system? That you'll be able to gauge, able to differentiate using this kind of tool, right? Okay, the second is the database and OS upgrades. Of course, what we're going to do in RS production next few months will actually fall in the same category. Third is the storage change. For example, if you're modifying your OCFS or any kind of storage change which you are actually doing, again, what change it will actually bring into real time, so that you only be able to understand using that. Other is the OS change, like Windows, Linux, and configuration change, like if you're modifying, if you're making single instance to rack or rack to single instance, that kind of modification, again, you will test it using that. Second is the patch installation, as I said, and database parameter change. For example, there is an important vital parameter that you're going to change in your database. Again, if you would like to understand how the workload will behave, you can use and test it using that. Okay. Second is which database version are supported. As I said, like this feature was actually introduced in 11G release 1, but the option still provides the backward compatibility. Backward compatibility means though the version is actually this feature comes with 11G release 1, but even for the later releases, not for the earlier releases, sorry, like NG release 2 is still supported, but not for replay, but for capturing the load. Like in our case, in RS production, we have the source system that are still running on. This RS production is 10G release 2, right? But this feature is actually was offered in 11G release 1. So we will be able to capture the load from 10G database, but not able to replay it on the same version. So capturing is possible on all of the versions that are below 11G release 1. But yeah, replaying the load is possible only on the version that are above 11G release 1. That is actually a very big, the very front question was what actually Ian asked. Like if I actually got confused. That's the reason why I actually reached to Oracle customer support, and then they cleared me. Like, okay, this is the view. So yes, 10G and earlier release is only possible for capturing the load, not replay. But in our case, we are capturing from 10G release 2 and playing it on 12C. So we are fine. We are eligible. We can use real application testing. One of the foremost reason, the leading reason why DBAs and application team are still not, comfortable and not interested in using the RAT feature is because it's licensed and the cost is quite huge. The cost is quite high, and that's the only reason, because if I talk about in the market right now we are about 6 to 7 free open source technologies, free open source methods, which can perform almost same like RAT. Not that much vivid, but yeah, of course, almost same, capturing the load and replaying what the other environment. But again, those are actually being open source. They do not take any guarantee, right? It comes with a clause like if anything breaks in a system, that's your own responsibility. So, but if you're using RAT, then you are actually getting the premier support from Oracle. For example, if you lost any XYZ amount of row or got any bug or any XYZ issue, then you always have real application testing available to support. That kind of thing is not possible in open source, right? Because if I talk about open source, like Slob is one of the tools that is entirely free, right? And Orion is one of the tools that is, again, entirely free for benchmarking. Not only these two, a lot of tools, plenty of tools are available in the market, which does almost the same work, but what real application testing. Okay, how to do it and where to start at all. So, well, there are two different ways how you can perform the real application testing. The DB replay functionality. The first is using Oracle Enterprise Manager. As you must be aware, like there is, one dashboard GUI interface, which DB is called Oracle Enterprise Manager. So anything that is possible using the command line is actually possible using the Oracle Enterprise Manager using the GUI options, right? But yeah, so that is also possible using a OEM, and the second is using the command line way. So these are the two screenshots. On your left is actually the way how you will do it, the capturing or the replay using the command line. And on the right side is basically how you use it using the Oracle Enterprise Manager. That's a GUI method. Like you have to log into the Oracle Enterprise Manager, you need to go to software and support, and then you need to click on real application testing, and then there is an option database replay. That's how you'll actually do if you're using it via Oracle Enterprise Manager. But yeah, me being an old school DBA, and most of us are actually, so I'm more comfortable using the command line method. Any question?
So you said that it is available after 11G R1.
Yes.
So it is available along with the license that 11G R1 comes?
It actually,
you have to buy the license again?
Of course, it's only applies it with Oracle Enterprise version. If you are using Oracle standard license, then of course you won't be able to use Oracle RAT functionality. So yes, you have to purchase the right license separately. It doesn't come automatically with your Oracle
with
Enterprise.
One, yes. It comes automatically.
Yes. So this is how it actually works. All right. Next slide.
So now BA is a standard, right? HP BA is standard version.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes. The reduced interest.
Okay, so though actually I was not interested to mention the steps, but still, this is how it easily looks like. These are some high-level steps. Like first of all, you capture the workload into the capture files in the form of the record files, which are basically kind of a flat file, and then you need to copy the file from test system to the test system and then pre-process. I think this slide should come later on. I think this is the real architecture.
okay.
I think you're
मैं यही पूछना चाहता हूँ. So basically how it works, you run this tool on the source system. Source I'm calling it from where I'm taking the capture,
right.
And target I would be calling where I'm
on
going
new
to
system, right? Correct.
Right. So you basically install this utility on the source system, and then execute this utility during a certain time frame.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And then what exactly it captures? So it captures whatever activities are going on the database.
Let me explain. What happened? For example, you have two systems.
Okay.
This is RS 10G, and this is RS 12C. Okay. All right. Here we have 2-node rack. Again, here too will have a 2-node rack. Alright, so this is basically kind of our source system, and this will be the target system. This is a live system, production system. Right? For example, now we are interested to capture a 10-minute load. For example, it starts with 10:00 to 10:10. And this is most probably always selected as a peak time. For example, when we have maximum workload coming and hitting our database. Right? So, HKT, for example, this is when we'll have maximum number of session and modification happening in the database, right? So we have decided that this we're going to go and we'll follow this time period, right? Okay, so what will happen when we initiate the capture here on source system during this period of 10 minutes? It will basically capture all of the select, update, delete, I mean everything that actually happens on your database. In the form of logins as well.
Okay. So let's just narrow it down because this is interesting to me.
Sure.
So it selects. So what exactly it does? So it basically captures all the DDLs.
What it captures?
DMLs.
Yes, DDL, DMLs, DQLs of course.
DQLs also.
Select is kind of a DQL when you're just querying your database.
So
right?
DQL gets also captured.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, everything that actually happens in your database, whether it's select, update, delete, insert, drop, or some trigger modification, some procedure call, PL/SQL block, along with the bind variable. So it basically what it does, it just captures that information, the SQL text along with the SQL binds, and it just saves in the makes a record in .rec files in the which are basically flat files in nature, right? So what it does here, there will be a shared directory where it actually keeps all our .rec files inside. So this shared directory will house all of those REC or recording files from the source system. So ultimately, we are not touching the source system, right? We are just asking the system, the source system, to just capture the information, like what all actually happened or ran on the database during this 10-minute interval. That's it.
Okay, so let us just try to understand this. So let's say that there are two DMLs and two DDLs that gets executed. Additionally, there could be 4 to 5 DQLs that gets executed. So 4 to 2, that is 8 kind of
transactions happen.
8 transactions happen. Now, what it would do? So it would basically capture what exactly, in the form of SQL, what exactly is executing on the database.
Absolutely,
because
yes.
Most of these, in our case, most of these would happen through our our application, right? But ultimately, application also converts it into the native SQLs, which are going to be executed, right? So, but that would be with the bind variables, okay? And the other important thing is, what if my source and my target systems are not in sync? So DDLs, DMLs, even DQLs also. I mean, I don't have data on my target. I captured something, so I don't know how it happened.
Exactly. And that's why we have this database backup and restore.
Okay.
So what happened, for example, we have decided this timeline. Okay, we'll capture the node from 10 to 10:10. So we'll make a note of the SCN number, what we call system change number. That will be from 9:59. I mean, we'll take a backup starting from this point. Right? So we'll have
backup of the data, entire data.
पूरे database का.
Absolutely, yes. और अगर आप इंटरेस्टेड हो, फॉर एग्जांपल आपके लिए है XLab स्कीमा बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. आपने सिर्फ XLab स्कीमा बोली है. XLab स्कीमा को आप 10 बजे अगर आपने शुरू किया ना, तो आपने 9:59 से 9:59 से आपने शुरू किया, ताकि फॉर एग्जांपल एक बहुत सिंपल सिनेरियो, आपने डिलीट चलाई है. अब डिलीट तो चला दी वो, लेकिन अभी वो हो सकता है वो जो आइटम है उधर को आप हो ही ना, तो वो तो आपका सिलेक्ट होगी नहीं सक्सेस, वो आपका डिलीट ऑपरेशन सक्सेसफुल होगा नहीं. इसका मतलब जो आप वर्कलोड सिमुलेट कर रहे हो वो आप 100% फुल प्रूफ नहीं है. फॉल्ट आ गए, यहाँ पे 1000 क्वेरी चली, यहाँ पे हो सकता है उस तरीके की डिलीट 400, तो आप पे तो सिर्फ 600 एग्जीक्यूशन हुए, तो ये फॉल्टी रहेगा एग्जीक्यूशन. इसीलिए क्या बोलता है, 10 बजे अगर आपका 10 से 10 तक करना है, तो 9:59 के सिस्टम चेंज नंबर या उस टाइम से आप बैकअप लेके यहाँ का आप इसको यहाँ भी store कर
You
देंगे।
answered all my questions because that is where I was thinking कि
Exactly right.
So आपको basically you have to take out that data or that modification, you know, to the target. And then simulate.
Then you have to replay. That's how it actually works.
Okay.
And that's what this screenshot or this image of the diagram explains. Like, okay, what happens is, like, these are the client application servers which connects with your production system, perform some kind of modification, and this is that shared capture directory. So what it will do, there will be, you know, around, numerous files what it actually creates during this 10 minutes of interval, right? And then we'll have to SCP or move these files from that shared directory which is available on the source system to your target, right? So once these files will reach on the target system, then you have to pre-process them. Saying pre-process, what happens is like, okay, it actually records this information in the form of flat files, right? Flat files are, you know, human readable. Machine level language is something else. So pre-processing steps, what it does, it converts that raw trace or the binary into something that machine understands. So that's the very first step what you have to execute when you successfully move your load files or recording files to the target system. Okay, so ultimately now I think I'm clear, like you are not touching anything on your source system, right? So what you did, you just instructed this program, this real application testing to capture the load, the 10-minute load, whatever XYZ happened on you, man, just give it to me and I'll save it to this shared directory and I'll play the same on the target, that's it. The very first, the most important point is, like, for example, if you're capturing from 10 to 1010, then 959.59 ms, that backup needs to be available there. Right? तो उसके बाद क्या होगा कि यहाँ पे हमने कर दिया this, again, the very first step that you have to do on the target is you have to process the capture.
ये तो उस दिन नहीं किया होगा हमने प्रशांत,
क्या चीज?
हमने बैकअप तो
नहीं, मैंने उस दिन क्या किया था, मैंने सिर्फ सेलेक्ट जो है वही लिया था. So there is another option, right? What happens is, like, if you don't want, there are 18 schemas and you don't want to take the load that is, of course, every time that there are some recursive SQLs, right, which are performed by sys or sysman or, you know, sysawk schemas, right? You're not at all interested like what all other SQLs, what internally it performs, right? So what you will do, you actually create some kind of filters. So filtering is another concept that comes into the capture, right? So you're least interested, least bothered about the load that is generated by the sysman schema, right? So you want to ignore it from your capture. So what I did, I actually created 11 different filters on the source system. So I completely ignored them. And I only captured select operations. So that I won't, once this load actually replayed on the target, those modifications, the delete and, you know, XYZ of kind of modification won't happen on that system. But yes,
but this filtration strategy, you know, needs to be selected carefully, because, you know, if you are going for a database migration like which we are going, you know, for which we are going to do this activity, I would not recommend we should do any kind of filtering. You know, we need to know that how exactly, what exactly was the load during the peak hour, irrespective of whether it is linked to a particular schema or it is linked to a particular user or it is linked to some internal processing which is going on within DB. You know, but I want to capture everything and run as is.
Okay, what happens is
I understand filtering can come into the picture if, let's say, that you are going to basically do performance monitoring, or you want to basically analyze a performance tuning, you know, that you wanted to put on production, right? In the second option that you said. But I think for a DB migration, what I understood that so far, you know, I think we should do it as is.
There is a case. For example, like in 10G, the system, the internal or the recursive calls almost, you know, there are certain processes where Oracle automatically, you know, keeps pinging a specific dynamic view within the data dictionary. That is not available in 12C, right? So for example, if you count those kind of selects, then again, you are actually, you know,
but what would happen to that?
Logic,
what
right?
would happen to that? Even in this case also, although you made the data same, you know, but the internal processing of the systems are not same.
No, I'm just giving a real-time example.
Your example is
yes.
Correct. You know, Shant, I'm just trying to understand that. what would happen to the internal request or internal SQLs which are formed due to a particular version of an Oracle system. So when I'm going to execute it on 12c, will I be getting any errors around it? Or
of course, yes.
Yeah.
You'll be getting few kind of error messages. Those are specific to that.
Okay.
There are certain errors basically, so which are relevant to real application testing replay. Most probably you'll get those kind of error message while you'll be replaying it on the target. So that's why, I mean, in fact, Oracle recommends like do not include or involve the sysman and OEM schemas and sys kind of schemas, because if you are doing it in between a major release like 10G and 12C itself are quite huge. I mean, those two are very different in nature. The way internal things happens or behaves in 10G and 12C are completely different. So that's how, I mean, that's why you don't want to include or involve those kind of internal or recursive sequences. That's the kind of a real case. I mean, if we are interested, of course, we can do it. And if not, we can take the entire recording of everything that actually happens on this 10G database, I mean, the source database for 10, 15, 20, 30. I think maximum is 1 hour. Maximum you can capture the load of any database for 60 minutes.
The max is 60 minutes.
Max is 60 minutes. Least, I'm not sure. Maybe for 1 or 2 seconds, I think. Okay, so what happens is,
what have we decided for RS migration? How much time we are going to run this? For 1 hour?
I actually got one guide which was actually maybe performed by the last engineers during the migration that has actually happened on HK production when it was earlier 10G and then they moved to 11G, right? So according to that guide, the guy actually picked a 10-minute interval, and that is actually very fine. When you are capturing the load during the peak hours, of course, 10 minutes is quite huge.
Okay, and I think let's discuss this again, maybe tomorrow.
Sure.
I mean, we need to see that RS schema is not same as HK Prod. HK Prod is a transactional system, and RS is more sort of the queries that get executed are DQLs. So
that strategy, of course, we have to set and understand system behavior. Then only we'll go.
We may able to see, I don't know. Let's just see the report. What exactly? How would we dodge whether there is a deterioration that has happened or there is an improvement that we are going to see?
I have few sample reports.
So वो देखते हैं, because that would be interesting. See what. So on RS, obviously, it is a DQLs. Mostly DQLs are getting fired, and obviously, if you take up the refresh process, also there are inserts, updates, and deletes that is also happening. But we need to see that at what time, what is the peak time that we are considering. Because ये peak time vary करेगा, so नहीं. अब अगर देखो, major uses of one source from an application perspective is done through orders, and that too, US time, not HKD. But major users of OS database is done during the daytime.
During the daytime, yes, during HK hours, yes.
So it would be interesting to know कि हम कैसे ये figure out करेंगे.
What actually I follow is just you can go and check the redo log generation. Like whenever you have maximum number of redo generation, that is the time slot where you have maximum number of transaction or modifications.
So did we done some analysis?
I have those stats with me. So there are certain hours within the day, within 24 hours, where we have maximum number of activity happening in the form of DU log changes.
2 to 6 team.
Close to that, yes.
2 to 6 team, yes.
That's the time.
So that is again, because of HKP. But we need to also capture, how does system behaves in the night, when US team works.
Okay, if required, we can, perform one level of testing during that time as well, so if needed. Because ultimately, as per the plan, so we'll have around 7 to 8 rounds of the stack testing. I mean, this is what actually.
Okay.
Okay. So these are basically steps like on source system, you have to file this command. Again, as I said, like I'll be explaining only using the command line way. There is another way that is using the Oracle Interface Manager. So I'm not covering that thing here. So on the source system, I mean, in this example on RS production 10G, you have to execute the first command, that is the start catch. Right? So what happens is like there is a catch again. There is a bug in 10G. So there is a clause minutes equals to, for example, if you want to capture only for 10 minutes, then you have to mention in the form of seconds, like minutes equal to these many seconds. And when then that threshold reaches, automatically it gets out. But due to a bug in 10G, we have to explicitly stop it. That's a bug. So we won't be able to use that flag, that argument, all because of that specific bug that's only there in 10G released. So even in this migration, which we're going to do in the next few months, whenever this RAT testing happens, so we have to manually stop it, the start capture process using this method, like finish capture. As I said, there is another option that is just where you mention minutes equals or duration equals these many seconds, and when that threshold reaches or breaches, automatically it gets stopped or killed and comes out of the terminal. But this will not going to happen in this 10G release due to a bug. Right? Second, once you are done with the finish capture method, like this one, then you have to copy the workload files to a client system. For example, this is the shared directory. For example, home Oracle RAT test one that will be shared between the two nodes. I mean, load will be happening on both the two rack nodes, right? The instance 1 and instance 2. For example, 10 queries are hitting and doing something in instance 1, and 15-20 queries are actually doing something on instance 2. So this shared directory will be a place which will house all of those .rack files from both of those two systems. So once this period gets over, you have these many files, 100 files, for example. So then, and the average size always, because I actually did a test, so on RS staging, the workload was quite less. I actually performed for around 32 minutes. So only 70 MB recording files got generated, only. Because there was very less. Again, we cannot compare it with the staging and on the production. Production is all different.
70 MB files got generated?
70 MB for 32 minutes.
These are flat files?
Yes, or flat files. Or REC are basically binary files. If you open it, you solve some random integration and some alphabet, some hexadecimals, right?
So, but 70 MB for 10 minutes?
For 32 minutes.
For 32 minutes,
yes.
On staging environment?
Nothing like this, right?
It's very small. If it is a flat file, then it is 70 MB is huge.
This is the size of the entire directory, I'm saying, not per file. Right. This is the size of entire 70, 80 files with that, I guess.
Okay.
All right. So once you have
how does it decide to create a file? Does it basically segregate between DMLs, DQLs, DVLs, or it basically creates only two files?
No. What you will see, like if you because if I talk about the 32-minute period, so there I have around 60 to 70 files, and all are actually in a proper order, like WRD 001, 2, 3, 4. So there is not any kind of special files which contain only the alters or which contain the select or reads. So that kind of segregation.
So there must be some configuration, at what time this file will roll up and then next file gets created.
That threshold, maybe some kind of internal argument will be there. I'm actually not familiar.
Okay.
Yes, there must be.
Obviously, yes. Without which it is not possible. How the system will know that in 30 minutes it has to generate 40, 80 files, as you said. So there must be some.
It's up to you. There must be some parameter. If required, we can directly go Oracle customer support. Because what happens is, like, if I talk about real application testing, we have very limited online documentation. That's the problem with RAT as well. So that's why, the consultants, the SMEs, or the architects are not really, understand about what exactly is this RAT thing. The only available document right now is the official guide or the documentation, and that again is very, shrink and close documentation. So there you'll not see, except some basic commands. So this is kind of an internal, what actually Amit sir asked, like there must be some kind of internal argument or parameter which control this behavior, like how many files need to be created and what should be the maximum size or the minimum size of a dump or that rec files, right? So there must be some parameter, but actually I'm not familiar, all because of the some faulty documentation online.
Is there any cost in terms of CPU memory?
I'm sorry,
The load.
the load. No, there is not any restriction. No.
Okay, while replaying also. While you replay on the target,
Yeah.
does it takes memory and CPU?
Takes memory and CPU. Okay, this is your question. Of course, yes. These are CPU intensive operations.
No, while capturing this, first was while capturing.
Not capturing, only during replaying. Capture does nothing. Capture only instructs the program, this DBMS underscore workload capture, okay. This is the time duration.
So from where it extracts all these sequences?
There are some dynamic view, like DB underscore history underscore active session history is one of the views.
Okay.
And that's where database keeps a record of every single SQL that actually executed on the database. So it just crept out or takes or does an internal select and then place it inside this shared directory. That's it. But the real load comes when you have to play this data on the target. I'll come and explain it. Okay, so you're done on the source part, right? So you have moved or SCP or transferred all of those files to your target system. Now the first step come on the target system is DBMS underscore workload replay. That's the process, the procedure that is relevant to the replay side. Then you have to first process it. As I said, like the capture basically generates the flat files, right? Those recording file only contains some binary piece of information, right? And sometimes it's human readable too, but that again, the machine doesn't understand. So this the process capture is basically what it does. This again is a CPU and memory intensive operation as well. Though it will run for a very short period of time, but till the time it processes that record file or the entire dump, you'll see a sharp inclination in the memory consumption and in the CPU, right? But again, this will happen on your target system. That's where you do not have any public traffic coming, right? Okay, second thing is DBMS workload replay initiate reply. That's when you actually instruct the program like, okay, this is all set. Next, you will have to execute the load on this system, which you have captured from the source. Second, the third step is prepare replay. Again, there is a very small difference between initialize and prepare. Prepare is again asking that program to be ready, right? And start reading, just go to the shared directory location where we have all of the files, check for any syntax or any file if it's missing, right? So that kind of scanning it actually does before the real, replay starts. Next is this is very important point. This actually answers your question as well. Okay, point number 4 is run the workload client. What exactly is the workload client? So along with the 11G installation, in our case 12C installation, within the RDBMS or the Oracle home, there is one file named as WRC. Here it is. Like how you will know like how many processes or how many clients you will be needing, right, to replay or to mimic or to simulate this kind of load, right? So this is a tool again provided by Oracle. So here you have to provide this, your credentials, and then mode equals to calibrate. The calibration needs to be performed, right? So this is the result. Okay, it's now saying consider using at least 3 clients divided among 4 CPUs. Here on the target we have 4 CPUs, and on the source as well we have 4 CPUs. So CPUs are same, so it's actually asking
3 or 13.
13. It's 13 clients. So it's actually asking to trigger at least 13 different or parallel WRC or workload clients in order to perform this parallel replay option. So, and also it is saying that you will need at least 168 MB of memory per client process. So this is the requirement. So calibration process क्या करता है? Calibration process ने आपको सिर्फ ये बता दिया कि इतना सारा रिकॉर्ड आपके पास आ गया है. अब उसको टारगेट पे प्ले करने के लिए आपको इतने क्लाइंट चाहिए. वो क्लाइंट्स क्या है? बेसिकली WRC है, एक वर्कलोड क्लाइंट करके Oracle 12C और 11G तो हर जगह पे एक बाइनरी में फाइल रहती है. अभी तो मोड इक्वल्स टू मैंने कैलिब्रेट किया. यहाँ पे अगला स्टेप जो होगा मोड इक्वल्स टू आपका रिप्ले हो जाएगा. मोड इक्वल्स टू रिप्ले, ये तो एक थ्रेड हो गई. ऐसे ही फिर सेम मोड इक्वल्स टू रिप्ले का एक और चला दूंगा. 2 हो गई, 3 हो गई, 4. ऐसे करके नोआप में मुझे अलग अलग 13 क्लाइंट्स चलाने पड़ेंगे, जो कि 13 के 13 क्लाइंट उन्हें पता है डायरेक्टरी का रिप्ले डायरेक्टरी उसे मालूम है यहीं पे वो फाइल्स आएंगे जो मेरी सोर्स से यहाँ कॉपी हुई है. अब ये 13 के 13 क्लाइंट जो पैरेलल चल रहे हैं ना, ये क्या करेंगे? उस लोकेशन जहां पे उसको पॉइंट किया गया है वो सारी फाइल्स को स्कैन करना शुरू करेंगे और ये क्या करेंगे? बैच बनाएगा इंटरनली कि यार ये बैच तू ले जाएगा, ये बैच तू ले जाएगा. अब जाके एक साथ पुश कर देना है। इस तरीके से ये रिप्ले हुई।
Okay. So I think that is handled by the tool itself. You know, how the batching will happen. You know, how many clients gets created. All that is
So this is the recommendation what you got, right? Once you do the mode equals to calibrate option, this option, this will produce an output which will give a recommendation like how many clients are actually required. It could be a case like it recommends 20. Like in the case of RS staging and between the RS POCVM, what I actually did some time back, few days back, right? So there it actually recommends only one client because the load was quite less. So it automatically gets to know, okay, the load is quite less. There is not need to run a 13 or a 14 different session. So I simply, opened a single thread of WRC and ask it to replay the load. This is the recommendation. I'm done now. Let's quickly open. Yeah. Yeah.
The other slide, you know, where the clients and assumptions would be.
This one?
What is this workload characteristics?
Where is the workload characteristics?
No, recommendation can you see that?
Recommendation. Okay. Maximum concurrency. Maximum concurrency at any given point of time.
What exactly is this number? How this number is predicted?
Again, on the basis of, because the program internally knows like how many SQLs are actually fired.
You just fired this mode calibrate.
Yes.
And then it gives you a file which has all these recommendations.
Recommendation, yes. It automatically gives that recommendation.
Okay, based on the data that you have captured.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Because I have instructed the program, this WRC in mode calibrate, and then ask this program to read everything that is available within this replay directory. And again, it contains the file which we have copied from the source system, right?
160 MB physical memory per client.
168 MB of, yes, physical memory RAM, yes. That's a quite less requirement, right?
But,
only 168.
But that clients can be depends upon your number of files, right? Like how many batches will be going.
It again up to you. Like there are certain background parameters and processes. For example, if you want the first WRC client to handle 30% of the load, and the second to handle 10% of the load. Like, but again, that is kind of a weird request, right? How you never want to happen this kind of thing, right? So that it automatically adjusted, or automatically managed or assigned by the WRC client, right? But still, if you want to do it, yes, there is a background parameter where you can set and instruct it to, okay, I want WRC client number 1 to handle this many total percent of the working.
So number of clients can be decided, can be
decided, yes. Can be, of course. For example, it's actually asking us to use 13 clients. If you want, you can use 15.
But these clients require that 160 MB and the target set.
No, for example, if you increase the clients,
require this number.
No. As per this recommendation, it's saying like if you are using 13 clients, then each client need at least 168 MB. For example, now you would like to run 20 WRC clients. And again, this request will be less, right? Because now you have more number of parallel sessions.